Right.
Now I think they can hear us, or probably
Yeah, let's hope so. Hello, everyone. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm sorry for the delay or if you've been caught in the chat. Okay, people are now responding. Okay, I made an error and didn't actively start the session, so apologies for keeping all of you waited in the lobby. I will not waste any more of your time, so let's just jump straight into it. With me here on stage is Gabriel. You will meet him in a minute, and he's going to tell us about the link and how to make the product strategy and business and market strategy work together as one instead of against each other. I'll just say a few more words before we jump into Gabriel's session. And I'll just be talking a little bit about why we're even doing all of this. To those of you who haven't joined the other sessions, the basic idea of these product talks, as we call them, the nerdy product talks, is to stay very, very close to product management as a practice, and really just go and zoom in on the practice that all of us run around doing in the trenches every day, and keep it curious and an open mind, and hopefully have a debate about it. So there's no generic PowerPoint presentations of some silver bullets that solve everything, just practical or methodological experiences that really help you get unstuck. And the reason we're doing these in the first place is because we see a lot of that happening in the one-on-one sessions in the Product Mentors platform, where you can book people like Gabriel and get advice where he helps you get moving along with whatever you're struggling with on your product plate, so to speak. And the reason we've split it up in themes is also to keep it, again, relevant and have some sort of red thread that covers the basics or the most interesting topics within a certain category. Of course, there's overlaps, so you're more than welcome to diverge into other areas if you think it links to what Gabriel is presenting or your situation. But otherwise, we're now at the second last session of product strategy, which is the theme of May and June. And we're going to pick it up again after the global north industrial vacation time, which is in July. So we're going to be starting a new one in August, probably around discovery and user involvement, where we're going to do another round of speakers, another round of topics within the theme of that. And that's how we plan on keep on going. And then, of course, we're going to be recording all of this material, and we're going to be resharing it with the community and the people who are part of the platform and the people who've signed up for it, such as yourselves. So if there are things you miss or some of the other sessions you want to go back and rewatch or watch in parallel with this one, you're more than welcome to, and that should be totally possible as well through this sign up. As of today, I won't say much more right now, only some practicalities. But Gabriel is going to do his presentation, and then during that, you're more than encouraged to just fire away your questions in the chat. I'll mark them and pick them up in the end, and then we'll discuss whatever you want to dive into there, or if there's something you want to challenge Gabriel about. I know he loves to be challenges. And if anything else, we'll just do all your questions and related comments, thoughts in the end. So just before we got started, I noticed that we have people from the EU region, from the Americas, from Brazil and North America signed up and so on. And just want to see where people are actually based. Where are you tuning in from? Just for us to know. So I'm just sharing a quick poll now, just to get a feel for where you guys are. And then after that, we'll be starting with Gabriel, and I will be quiet and step a little bit into the background. So seems like we have a spread of the EU and a little bit of Asia, a little bit of North America, and especially the EU. And maybe that's a good place to start, Gabriel, and introducing where you are in the intersection between continents, and then
Yes, I
continue
am.
your presentation. Please enjoy, everyone, and I'll stay off stage.
Thank you. By the way, could you put in the chat if you can see the slides? Just make sure that you can see the slides, you can see me. If there's going to be, by the way, any type of lag or delay with turning the slide, I may turn off my video, and because it taxes the bandwidth. But I just want to know that you can see the slides and you can see me. So can somebody confirm that in the chat? Mhm. Yes. Yes, I assume that you guys can see. All right, so let's start. One sec. Very good. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining in today, and it's a pleasure for me to be here. My name is Gabriel Steinhardt, and this presentation is going to be about the synchronizing of the product strategy with the business and market strategies. This session is going to be something between 15, 17 to 20 something minutes, and then we can have a Q&A after this presentation. Our agenda for today is first to discuss what is strategy. Then we'll talk about something called the corporate strategy mix, of which product strategy is a part of. We'll talk about synchronizing the strategies, which is the main topic of this presentation, and we'll conclude with a summary. Now, before we proceed, I'm sure that all of you are familiar with different types of strategies, and I want to make sure that people understand that this presentation is unrelated to things such as military strategy, political strategy, energy strategy, monetary strategy. This presentation is completely unrelated, although there could be some transferable ideas from this presentation to all these types of strategies. This presentation is going to deal with something that we're going to call the core strategies, which are used in a corporate setting. So let's begin with our introduction. And our introduction first deals with what is strategy. So strategy is the coordinated set of long-term decisions that help a company achieve its objectives. And this means that strategy is really an aggregate, kind of a bundle of different types of decisions. They're all interrelated and connected. They're all working towards the same goal, and they're all kind of long-term forward-looking. Every strategy in the context of a business is trying to do two things: provide more value than the competition and help build a sustainable competitive advantage. And these two goals are either at the company level or at the product level. Now, there's also something which is called tactics. If strategy is about the decisions, then tactics are about the actions that we take in order to fulfill, to achieve the strategy. So this is the relationship between strategy and tactics, between decisions and the actual actions. Now, a bit of a dose of reality with regard to strategy. When you're formulating strategy, there is no formula. There's no logical, mathematical, intuitive type of formula that you would look at and, put in values into variables and it will give you the strategy. There is no such thing. There is no template to fill in the blanks and follow some kind of a process. There is no best practice. You could look at perhaps a company in Chicago, in North America, in the USA, and you will not be able to copy that to a company located in Europe, in Denmark, in Copenhagen. So there are no best practices, and you have to define the strategy that best fits your situation. Strategy is expressed as a statement. That is, it could be a sentence, it could be a paragraph, it could be a page, but it's really us putting on digital paper an expression, statement of the decisions and the directions that we want to go through. So let's talk about something which is called the corporate strategy mix. The corporate strategy mix is comprised of three different strategies: business strategy, market strategy, and product strategy. These are the three interconnected core strategies. And in PMTK, we call this the corporate strategy mix, or you can call it also the strategy mix. Now, there's a whole range of other important strategies in the business setting. There's distribution and sales strategy, and there's operational strategy, and there's a lot of different ones, but these are the core relevant to us in product management. So let's go over each one of these, figure this out, what they are and what they're supposed to do. So business strategy is the coordinated set of long-term decisions that help a company become a leader, follower, or innovator in a particular line of business. So when you ask this question, let's say about Microsoft, I could say that Microsoft is a leader in desktop operating systems. It's probably a follower in search engines, internet, mobile applications, and it's possibly an innovator. They've got patents written under their name, like clear type fonts or whatever you want in those particular line of businesses. So we already understand that when we're talking about a business strategy, a company can have several business strategies relative to the line of products that they're in. Following the business strategy is the market strategy. Now, if the business strategy is about the company, it's at the institutional level. Market strategy, not marketing strategy, is about the market. And there are three decisions that need to be made over here. Which are the target markets that we're going into? What are the objectives we want to reach in each one of these target markets? And that means in marketing objectives, not in financial objectives. So marketing objectives could be sales velocity, number of units sold, market share, growth rate of the market share, not in financials. And the third thing is how to build a corporate competitive advantage. That is something at the company level which makes people buy from the company, not the product. It has nothing to do with the product. I know of families who always buy Toyota. Doesn't matter the model, they buy from Toyota. I know people who always buy IBM when it comes to laptops. In my family, they always bought Nikon cameras. It doesn't matter the model. We always preferred a particular brand, a particular company. And the third thing is the product strategy. Product strategy is something probably we're most familiar with. These are the set of coordinate set long-term decisions that build and enhance products to fit market needs. By the way, they like to call it these days product market fit. And I think that even somebody wrote a book around this, but it's a pretty straightforward statement. And the second thing is how to build a product competitive advantage, something that the product does that differentiates it from the competition and at the same time provides value to the user, to the customer. So these three strategies together, collectively, are called the corporate strategy mix. Now, we can make different types of decisions at each level of these particular strategies. So when we're talking about business strategy, which is at the institutional level, this is about the company becoming better. Doesn't matter the markets they operate in and the products that they sell. This is about manufacturing capacity, the number of people we have, the type of people we have, the budgets, the financials, the partnerships, the coverage at the company level. Market strategy is how the company is perceived in the particular market it operates. Fair pricing, reliability means that they promise and they deliver, good warranty, good service, they're easy to reach, not like some insurance company or mobile operator where you wait on the line for an hour. Proliferation is also how the company treats the market. Proliferation means a full scope of products at different price points that cover the market needs. In our business, mainly high-tech and software, we have light, standard, professional, and enterprise. In the B2C world, you usually see something like economy, classic, and premium. When we talk about product strategy, these are probably familiar to all of us, innovation, all the decisions you want to make with regard to the product to make it fit the needs of the market. Let's take a look at an example of business strategy for one company. Perhaps you're familiar with this company. It's called Boston Dynamics. It's located in Boston, Massachusetts. It's an offshoot from a project that took place in MIT. And I'm going to speculate that their business strategy is that they want to become an innovator, not a leader, not a follower, an innovator in something which is called dynamic robots, which is their line of business. These are robots that look like animals and humans and they move similarly through engineering workforce. They're going to take the best engineers, the best people in software and mechanical engineer, whatever, and they're going to point them towards a line of business which is going to be called dynamic robots. I believe that the criteria that they're going to use in order to decide if they have been recognized or they achieved a level of being an innovator is through the number of patents that they have been issued. Let's take another example. Let's talk about the business strategy. And I'm using here very familiar type of strategy mixes because it's easy for us to relate to. Apple is known for a variety of products, and let's talk about the business strategy for Apple in something which is called their smartphone line of business. So I believe that Apple wants to be a leader in mobile smartphones, which is their iPhone, of course, through mergers and acquisitions, human resources, and other resources. They're going to buy anything that they need in order for them to create the iPhone and enhance it. They bought ARM, the chip manufacturer. They have hundreds and a lot of people over there. They can throw literally 200 developers and 20 managers and 3 secretaries and testers and whatever you want, and any project, product, or problem that they would have and solve it. And they've got resources. They've got money in the bank. They've got brand awareness and values. They've got distribution networks. They've got operational and manufacturing excellence. They've got a lot of things going for them in this business. And I believe that the criteria for them to determine if they're a leader in this business is the number of units sold. Let's continue with Apple because it's really, really relatable for a lot of people. I'm going to speculate that the target market for the iPhone is the USA. It's not overseas, and we'll talk about that perhaps a little later. And what they want to achieve in this target market, the USA target market, is a dominant market share. So let's say over 50%. Now, when we're talking about people's preference to buy from Apple, and it's not about the product, they're going to buy from a financially stable company. There's good warranty support. There's values associated with this company. They are very liberal. They have diversity, inclusion, wokeness, liberalism, all kinds of things. A lot of people in the United States favor this, and they would buy from Apple because of that. Let's move on now to the product strategy. So there's a lot of things that they have made decisions about to include in the iPhone. There's the graphic design, the personalization, all kinds of things like that, high quality components. I believe that the product advantage is only the intuitive interface. It is very intuitive to use the user interface for an iPhone. And you have these surveys of 3-year-olds and 2-year-old kids handling an iPhone and very quickly getting the feel of it, as opposed to, let's say, with an Android phone. So when we take these 3 slides and we combine them together, we get the corporate strategy mix for Apple in their line of business of smartphones. And I think that this particular collection of strategies has been very successful for Apple. Over 50% of Apple's entire revenue comes from the sales of iPhone models. Now, we can take this model, this particular corporate strategy mix model, and we can apply it to anything. We can apply it to McDonald's as well. So let's take a look. McDonald's, in my mind, they want to be a leader in consumer hot fast food through franchising. The way the company grows is by franchising and licensing. I believe that the criteria they're going to use in order to establish themselves as a leader is the number of hamburgers sold. They used to have signs in the US where there was a counter, 1 billion, 2 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion hamburgers sold, and so forth. So I think that's the criteria they're using. They want to be all over the world. They want to be particularly in urban markets, and they want to be specifically in the center of town of the urban markets and the pedestrian areas. The competitive advantage at the company level, well, you're not dealing with corporate, you're probably dealing with the restaurant. So my speculation is that the competitive advantage of a McDonald's restaurant is going to be the service consistency. Doesn't matter what you buy, what you eat over there. Every way that you go to a McDonald's restaurant all over the world, it's the same type of ordering process and the same type of people, the teenagers and the cash registers and the posters. It all looks the same. And with regard to the product itself, I think that the Competitive advantage for some people is that it always tastes the same. It's homogeneous all over the world. A hamburger that you ate 10 years ago at McDonald's, you'll eat today and in 10 years from now, it's always going to taste the same. There's a lot of chemicals involved over here. And that familiar taste that's always there and consistent all over the world is a competitive advantage for some people. Let's do one more before we go into synchronizing the strategies. So we can use this model on anything. We can do it on Facebook, and we can also do it at our company, and we can also do it at our competitors. And that's a very interesting exercise to put a corporate strategy mix of your company versus the competitors. But let's deal with Facebook quickly. Facebook is an online networking service that connects people with their families, their peers, their work peers, and their friends. And I would speculate that their strategy mix is going to be something like this. They want to be a leader in online social interactions. And they're going to do that through mergers and acquisitions primarily. They bought the the Oculus Rift, virtual reality headset, because they believe that the world is going from textual to graphic to video to virtual reality. So they want us to do social interaction in virtual reality. Okay. And they also bought WhatsApp. I believe that the leadership criteria over here is the number of subscribers. They want global availability. People will work with Facebook because they have a lot of different types of services and offerings, and it's a financially stable company. And you can choose whatever you want as the competitive advantage, whatever you want. Choose it for the product strategy. So now we've reached a point where we need to discuss how we're going to synchronize the strategies. And before we do that, I just want to check something here. Okay, very good. So let's talk about synchronizing the strategies. One approach to synchronize the corporate strategy mix is a top-down approach. A top-down approach is where a company decides that it wants to be a leader, follower, or innovator in a particular line of business. Then it goes and it selects suitable markets which they believe will help them achieve that goal, that's business strategy goal. And then they produce a product that is targeted directly at those suitable markets, and that hopefully will help the company become recognized as a leader, follower, or innovator in that line of business. What happened with Apple, and this is the top-down approach in which they won, they were successful. They, for something like 20 years, were a leader in designing consumer electronics. They moved from computers to electronics. They changed their company name from Apple Computer to Apple Electronics. For 20 years, they were designing consumer electronics. They were well recognized in it. They decided that they wanted to become a leader in smartphones. They said to themselves, we're going to target the US market because we're recognized over here. We've got a lot of brand association, good values. The American public likes us because of our Macintosh computers, iPod, and all kinds of things that we had. So they produced a very stylish and intuitive smartphone for the US market. I'm going to say this, and this is my opinion. The iPhone was designed specifically for the US market and specifically for the American consumer. And here's why I think it is as such. Well, we can discuss if you want later on. I'll be happy to hear your opinion, why you think it's so. Just 2-3 months ago, in April 22, the iOS market in the USA was, I'm rounding it up, 60%. But we can see that at the same time, the overseas market for iOS, which is all the iPhone models out there, was 14%. So I'm rounding this up. 6 out of 10 phones in the US are iPhones, but only 1 out of 10 phones outside the US is an iPhone. We can see, though, that they're growing strong in the US. Just in Q1, the iPhone 13, which is their latest model, was the most successful. And that's just one model. They probably sold a lot of other different models. So their strategy mix, top-down approach for the US market was successful. Now let's take a look at another way of synchronizing strategies, but this is kind of a bottom-up approach. A bottom-up approach is where the company produces a product, and that product finds its way into certain markets. And in those markets, the product is recognized with the company in a certain way, and that is how the company becomes recognized. So this is kind of a bottom-up approach in that life leads you instead of you trying to lead life. Let's take a look at an example. 20 years ago or so, in the early 2000s, Nokia had a range of phones which were excellent. They were mobile phones, not smartphones. They were rugged and they were reliable, and you can bang them on the wall and drop them, and the sound, the audio quality was good, and the battery life was okay. Everything was good. And then they realized after certain models, that Nokia realized after it launched certain models that these models were extremely successful in India. The reason was that there was good fair pricing over there. They had a very good service and distribution network that was based on the mobile operators in India. You had all these little shops all over India selling you cases and chargers and accessories and phones. There was a whole little industry around it. And consequently, Nokia became the leader in mobile phones in India in units sold. So in 2007, Nokia's market share in India was 70%. That's huge. But we can see, and this is the latest stat I could find, Nokia's market share in India in 2019 was 2%. So in the early 2000s, 70 out of 100 phones were Nokia. In 2018, 2 out of 100 phones were Nokia. So this is kind of a bottom-up approach, but it was successful at the time. So who is supposed to write all of this, and where do we find all this information? So the corporate strategies mix, which we know is business, market, and product strategy, is formulated by different people. The executives, the company executives at the company are the ones who are supposed to formulate the business strategy. And the business strategy is documented in the company's business plan document. So without going into a certain discussion, why, because it's out of scope, but product management is responsible for the market and product strategies. So that means that we need to look at the business strategy and then select the markets and produce the products that fit those markets, which will in turn help the company achieve its business objective. Now, by the way, this arrow that you see over here pointing up, that leads to something which is called the mission and the vision of the company. It's actually a bigger strategy, and there's more elements involved over here. But this is a component that we're dealing with now with regard to the strategy mix. Okay, so let's go for the summary. So our key lesson, of course, for today is that we need to develop a valid and clear corporate strategy mix and abide by it. And abide by it means that this is our GPS, it's our compass that guides us. And every decisions that we make at the company, whether it's the business decisions, the market and the product decision, have to go through the filter of the strategy to see that they conform to it. So every time we make, let's say, for example, a product decision, we need to see that it is in tune with the product strategy and it somehow fits with the market and the business strategies. There's a saying that an airplane is 99% of the time off course when it's flying from one point to the other, but it's constantly making corrections, and that is how it reaches its destination. And this is the same over here. This corporate strategy mix is a tool for us to constantly judge and qualify our decisions and make corrections, so we're always pointing in the right direction and we're going to achieve our mission and vision. Lastly, we in product management, and this is kind of stating the obvious, have to conceive the market, define the market and product strategies, and synchronize them with the business strategy. If you want to read more about this, then there's some additional information inside the PMTK book, second edition. And you can also reach me through the Blackblot website, or if you want directly, please connect on LinkedIn. So I want to thank you all for listening into this presentation. I hope you found it informative and perhaps also interesting. And at this occasion, I would like to also thank Simon for managing this session, and for Thomas and to product mentors in general for allowing us to have this presentation. So if there's anybody who would like to ask anything, then I'm happy to answer this. And I'm going to stop the sharing now so we don't tax the bandwidth.
All right. Thank you so much, Gabriel.
My pleasure.
And I think people have been paying a lot of attention, because at least there hasn't dropped any messages or questions in the chat so far. So everyone, let's open up now and fire away. Please just shoot whatever you would like to know or want elaborated or want to challenge, and I'll be happy to facilitate it. While you all take a think or write your question, I have a you can say a challenge or a question for you, Gabriel, because a lot of this also makes sense in a, I don't want to say traditional, but in, like you also said, in a corporate environment. But how do you see this ownership of the business market and product strategy tweak a little bit if it's, for example, a small SaaS company with one product or maybe two, which really are the business? Do you see any change, or is it the
No,
same
it's the same
principle?
principles. And the principles of product management are universal and they're applicable to anything in B2C, B2B world. The only thing that changes is the nature of the market and the internal dynamics within the company. So you could have a situation where in a small company, the CEO would be involved not only with the business strategy, but also with helping out, let's call it, micromanaging some places, but involved with the market and the product strategies. At larger companies, then it becomes a little bit more bureaucratic and communication becomes a little slower, and everybody becomes more focused on their particular domain and specializing in it. So as the company grows, usually what happens, people specialize more and more. And then we see that executive management is more concerned with the financials of the company. It's more concerned with the general long-term directions, with the strategic directions of the products. And it lets us in product management make the decisions with regard to the product market strategies quite autonomously. Okay, so I think we have a question here from Akil.
Yes, and I can recite it, but I'm just going to invite you on stage, Akil. If you're up for it, you can join us up here and just phrase your question yourself. And if not, of course, just let me know. Then I'll read it out loud if you're in a noisy environment or something.
Akil? Oh, you got a problem with your microphone.
I'll come to the mic. Okay, so the question is, within a digital transformation initiative,
Okay.
one of them being automation, focusing on automating business processes. The thinking is moving from a project mindset to a product mindset. But since this completely internal, what do you suggest, Gabriel, that they focused on in terms of the
Okay,
market
there's
perspective?
several topics here that we need to unpack, but let me first focus on what I think is the core issue over here, which is the project mindset going on to the product mindset. So I need about a minute to explain this thing. There are three types of product delivery strategies, and product delivery strategy is the manner or the philosophy of how a company brings products to market. I'm going to make this very short. One approach is called the technology-driven approach, which is not what Akil is talking about, but in this approach, the engineers are dominant, they control a lot of things, they're focused on technology, and it's a push mode approach. They create products, they push it out. That's usually, in many cases, the earlier stages of a company that is almost always formed by people with a background in manufacturing or in technology. The company moves to what Akil is calling the project mindset. I call it sales driven. The project mindset is when the company takes the technology that is developed and it's willing to customize it and modify it and create variants for different type of companies. We can call this sales-driven, custom job, project-driven, whatever you want. They're not looking at a market. They're looking at one particular customer at a time, and they're willing to customize, modify, and do whatever you want to the product. It's really a platform so that the customer gets. And you get what we call product mutations, and you need to support all these mutations with their different types of features. This is not sustainable, and you're constantly chasing one customer at a time. This is custom software development. The third stage, and I think that this is what Akil is talking about when he's talking about the product mindset, he's talking about market-driven. And market-driven means that no longer the developers are in charge of the product strategy. No longer are the salespeople in charge of product strategy. Whatever they sell, we're going to build it. Now the product managers are in charge. And what happens is that they're looking at the market, deciding what the market needs, and then coming back into the company, providing the information, and then the company can provide products that fit those market needs. This really has nothing to do with automation, but it is something that has to do, Akil, with that internal transformation. This is a cultural change in the company because you're moving control and centers of power and influence over the product from one group to another group. And this has to be done very cleverly with HR and with the executives to make sure that everybody understands that this is just a mechanism for people to better focus on their core competencies, and that everybody is important and whatever, but the product management people are now going to manage the market problem, and you, the developers, for example, you're now going to manage the solution. So everybody's going to focus on completely different things. But yes, there is a cultural change over there, and you could encounter a lot of resistance because of that.
Small follow-up question. Akil, feel free to do the same if you want. Just write another one. From my side, the follow-up question, Gabriel, would be, what's the hurdles or the best tips, so to speak, in navigating that if you're the one initiating this cultural change?
Whenever there's a change in a company, whether it's a new person, a new manager, a new system, even relocation to a new office, people are always concerned what the effect will be on them. And now we're going into managing human relations and managing the workforce. It's really a little bit out of scope to product management, but the thing is that you need to provide everybody with a certain level of confidence that they're going to be valued and retained in the company. It's like just rearranging the furniture in the living room. It stays the same, but things are moving around, but nobody's getting thrown out. And I have an interesting anecdote to say that I was at a certain company and we did a move from technology driven to market driven. And there was a lot of resistance from the people. And what happened was we realized that people are really concerned about their titles. And we told them that they can choose to be senior and expert, and that solved the problem. So people were really concerned mostly about their position and the value that they would provide the company and how dependent the company is on them, less so much about the actual work itself. But that's the reality of things. And that is why I said early on, you are not, if you're making these changes from technology driven to sales driven to market driven, which is a normal course in the life of a company, you need to have the executives and HR involved, because there's a lot of people and egos and personalities, and companies are really social systems in which people work and interact with, and you need to be able to recognize it and be cognizant of it. But that's a little bit out of scope for the product management, but it is, of course, very important when you're moving from these, what Akil is calling these different mindsets.
Yeah, and especially if the product person is kind of put in ownership of that or meant to lead that transition, then I guess it's super important to know which allies and
Oh,
which people you need to involve in that because there's a limit to what
there's
you can do
not going to
yourself.
be no allies in this particular transformation. The executives are going to hand it over to you. The technical people, the engineers, are going to say that you don't know technology good enough, and therefore you're not in a position to tell us how to do our job or what should we do. It's it's really something that you need to have the executives presiding over it, not muscling in, but giving sanctioning and approving this
Mm,
change. And by doing that, you will be
mm,
able to do that. People are concerned about their
mm.
status. They're not so much concerned about the actual work that they're going to do.
At least it's a good analogy. I remember one of the best examples illustrating UX design, for example, is that it could be an engineering challenge to make an elevator go faster from level 1 to level 50 or vice versa, because it's a waste of time and we don't want to be in there and overthink what can go wrong or not. And an engineering or a tech approach there would be to optimize and make the elevator go faster and ensuring comfort. Whereas another way of solving that is to put a mirror in an
Yes.
elevator, because then suddenly the perceived time is completely different. So it's like the titles that you mentioned. And I have another question that touches upon this, this thing that you're saying about where the scope ends and begins for a product
Yes.
manager. Because I also see that at least there's a lot of buzz right now about product-led companies, whatever that means. Maybe that's something you would touch upon first. But how much should product influence the business or market strategy and not the other way around in your perspective?
So there's two questions. So first of all, let's talk about product led. I'll be very honest with you. I have no idea what this means. There are a half a dozen different types of definitions floating out there. Um, there's a trend in the product world to take things that have been established for 20, 30, 40 years and just rebrand them and rename them and giving the appearance of something new. I understand it, that's fine. But um, I have no idea what product led means. And if somebody knows in the audience over here, I'll be happy to hear your perspective or your opinion of what it is. So that is one thing. The second thing is you spoke about the boundaries of the product manager. Okay, so
Yeah, so let's say that it's a product-led organization or a very ambitious and proactive, progressive product person leading the product strategy. How much should they try to influence or change the market strategy or the business strategy if it's really beyond their
the thing
scope?
is this, I'm talking now about how I advocate to do certain things. It's very difficult to get to reach optimized the best decisions with a committee. You constantly have to reach an agreement, which is everybody says yes, let's do it, or consensus, which means everybody believes that this is the correct thing. And doing it by consensus is not the right thing. So, in my opinion, you need different people at different levels making a decision with regard to the strategy. I'm sorry, I cannot turn off my phone. It's got a problem with the switch. And you have everybody around them in what I call decision support. So, for example, if the product manager is making decisions with regard to product strategy, I'll be happy for everybody, including the executives, to come in and give me their opinion and suggest any suggestion that they want. I'll make the decision. And likewise, when it goes to the market strategy and the business strategy, I will voice my opinion. I'm paid for my opinion. That's what I think. And then whoever is making the decision can decide, having factored in all the various perspectives. It's the same thing with pricing and all kinds of things that have to do with one individual making a decision, let's say on pricing, but you can hear people from product, from development, from executive, from sales, and then you make a decision on the pricing. So that I think is the model. And it's applicable not only to product strategy, it's applicable to almost anything in the company.
All right, thanks. I have more questions, but if anyone else in the crowd out there wants to ask something, then we have 5 more minutes before we're at least scheduled to stop. So please fire away. And what I would say is also touching a little bit upon some of the details within the product strategy that you mentioned in the beginning, Gabriel. You said that what it is it's basically covering the distance, so to speak, from strategy to tactics, like decisions and actions. Where would you suggest that project product
Yes.
managers are very heavily involved in that spectrum, and where they try to let more go? Because I also see a lot of product managers trying to be spread over a very wide
Yeah.
spectrum, and maybe getting some tips on where to focus
So
in this
now I
regard would
need
be
to
great.
deviate again for a 1 minute explanation, and explain the four different types of approaches out there which are prevalent in product management. And I'll do this very quickly. There is the generalization approach, which is remnant from the 1990s, in which the product manager is CEO of the product. This is modeled after people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, who did everything. They were the engineers, the salespeople, the managers, the marketing, everything. They were, and a lot of the product managers during the 90s were modeled after this. So the generalization approach is you're doing everything and anything. There's always those conversations about leading without authority, getting people to do what you want to, and whatever. Okay, so let's put that aside. That's the generalization approach. There's something which is called the business approach, and this is mostly common in companies where the product is a commodity like internet or cellular services. The product manager is mostly responsible for money issues, budget, costing, sales, revenue, stock price. Everything that the product manager does is about optimizing and dealing with money things. Sometimes they like to call it the product manager manages the business of the product. The third thing is what probably a lot of the people here in the audience are familiar with is the technology approach. In the early 2000s, what happened was that revenge of the nerds, the engineers through Scrum and Agile were able to take the product manager and associate the product management position with product ownership in Scrum. And the product manager, in a way, became a resource working directly with the product development people, less doing other things, which we can talk about later. And the product manager, therefore, needed to be a former engineer, somebody technical. And the focus in the generalization approach is for the product manager to define features and functionality of the product, communicate that to the developers, and make sure that they develop it. So that's the generalization, the technology approach. This approach, by the way, now is kind of unraveling, because who's going to do product management if there's somebody that's titled the product manager, but they're really occupied on a daily basis constantly with the developers? They're really a part of product development. The third approach is the methodology approach, which is like PMTK. I'm not going to go too much into that. PMTK is governed by rules, by foundation rules. There's the problem space, which is product management, the solution space, which is product development. There are roles which interact and do as interface. It's very orderly and very organized. So when we talk about product management, most people have an opinion or a perception that falls into one of these four different types of product management. And this is a subject for a different discussion. What is correct? What is incorrect? What is the problems with each approach? Um, what happens? Are you really doing product management with certain approaches? And it's a topic for a separate discussion one day. I think Deb has a question here.
Yes. Okay, so really what you're saying to my question is that it kind of depends on what kind of product management and organization you
Yes.
have to what extent you should be involved in these different spreads, and that's a different discussion.
If you're CEO
That's
of
fair
the
enough.
product, and if you are in the technology approach, by the way, views product management as subservient to the product development method. So if they move from Scrum to Safe, you'll do something else. And if they move from Safe to that, you'll do something else. And to Waterfall, and you get the idea.
Right. All right. So let's. Sorry, everyone. We're gonna go a few minutes over and
No
take
problem.
Deb's,
I'm here.
Deb's question.
I have
you
at
don't have
least another 15 minutes, and then I need to close.
Okay, great. If you don't have the time to stick around, people, you can watch the review afterwards. Deb, what's up? What do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, based on what you just mentioned, the question was triggered by the four approaches that you talked about, and I think it's a very sensible way to sort of organize this information. My question is, in your experience, what are the top 1 to 3 things that come to mind, which in the discipline of product management over the last, say, 30, 50 years or what have you, has not changed? Equivalent to like SQL in all things data. What are the 1 to 3 things that has not changed and has to be the first principle, irrespective of whatever approach anyone chooses?
Are you talking on a practical level or on a theoretical level, a methodological level?
Practical.
Okay.
Practical. Like SQL for data. Like, I mean, no matter how you do data, you have to like make it available in SQL, right?
I think the answer, which I'm going to tell you, is that it is not going to be exactly what you expected. On a practical level, it's a mess. And it's becoming more messier at the moment. So there is no consistency. There's a lot of people promoting different ideas, different opinions, some of them more supported than others, some unfounded completely, somebody waking up in the morning just making things up. And it's the reality of things. So I'm unable to find anything practically that has been consistent over the decades with regard to product management. Everybody is saying Procter & Gamble. In Procter & Gamble, it was a brand manager. It was an aggregator of information about a product. It transformed itself to the CEO of the product and all kinds of things, and we can talk about this. So there is no consistent one thing, the backbone of product management a long time. At the theory level, there is. And I believe that regardless of the different approaches and the different forces, the product manager was always the voice of the customer. It was always the interface between the company and the market. It was always what they like to call outbound, upstream, market facing, all these names. So whether under these 4 different approaches you get to exercise or not get to exercise, whatever your connection with the market, that's the practical part. But they do still expect you to know what the market wants. And I think that the idea in most cases is that when you ask the product manager something about what customers and users want, the expectation is that it's as if the entire market got on its feet and said this particular thing. So that, I think, is on a theoretical level, was the consistent thing throughout times. But you didn't get to practice this practically because, and I'm not making a joke over here, but this is the reality, because of various reasons that we can again go into a different discussion. What happened is that product managers were given responsibilities that belong to other departments. Roles from marketing, roles from project management, roles from program management, roles from sales, doing demos, all kinds of things that were belonging to other departments were given to you. And that made it very difficult and confusing for product managers to know where they should focus. But I'm not going to continue. I mean, we can have a very interesting and long discussion about this. And there's a lot to be said here with regard to the profile of a product manager and how today actually it's becoming even more and more confused.
There you go, Simon. We've got like more. Actually, the mess is then consistent, right? Based on your answer.
Sorry?
I'm saying actually the mess is then the consistent pattern over the last couple of decades, anyways, right? I'm really keen to continue the conversation, Simon. The next, whenever you think the theme is anti-patterns and things that stop the theory and the practice to converge in some sense of it in product management, I'm absolutely keen to
I'm
partake in
happy
that
to.
kind of
I'm happy
conversation.
to.
Yeah.
I'm
And I'll
happy to
continue
do
the
this
game.
conversation, but I foresee things becoming more confused and less consolidated in the product management domain because there's a lot of forces, a lot of promotion, a lot of a lot of companies involved over here, and we can talk about this. I mean, probably we should do a session and we can talk about the future of product management and the different aspects controlling it.
Yeah, I think that would be
Thank you.
great. On that note, a very high level note, stay tuned for season 2, I would like to say. It's like a yeah, major cliffhanger. I think this was a great way to end, and I just want to say again, sorry for going a little bit over time, everyone, for those who stayed with us, and thank you once again, Gabriel, for your insights and your answers to all the questions, and thanks everyone for dropping by, and just want to say one final thing here, that if you want to rewatch this episode, see some of the others, claim your discounted access to product mentors, and talk more to Gabriel in depth about the future and the forces of product management, here's the link for it, just in case you didn't know. And it's also where you can see all the old talks and so on, and go back to that. Just reminding everyone, it will also be in the emails following up on this, of course. Other than that, just want to wish you all a happy afternoon, day, wherever you are, and enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend when you get there.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Simon. Bye-bye.